I love Anodyne. Anodyne is a top-down adventure game released originally in 2013 by Marina Kitaka and Melos Hantani, nowadays known as Analgesic Productions. In April of 2020, the game's source code was released, with the game's art and music also being free to use. This resulted in fan projects and mods still being worked on to this day. One of these such projects ended up becoming the official Anodyne remaster by Cynthia Steenvoorden, Saf de Busser, and Ethan Lee. This remaster has quite a number of new features, but maintains the base game in all essences, even the neat sequence breaks. But yeah, 2013, huh? This game is 11 or so years old at the time of this video, and it was only made over the course of about a year. According to me, I first played Anodyne back in 2015. However, in a stellar showcase of my memory failure, according to Steam, I actually first played this game back in 2019, same month as now and all. Imagine that. I was a lot younger back then, and a lot of the overall message of this game sort of just went over me, alongside me not quite understanding what it was about games I loved. So I wanted to take this time to give Anodyne a revisit, and see if my rather foggy thoughts have changed in any way. Anodyne tells the tale of Young, a chosen one hero with the task of protecting the Briar by defeating the darkness, which has been spreading across the land. And yes, these are the names of the entities and locations. If you may think this is a rather generic plot, then trust me when I say it's a then backdrop to tell a very different story. I honestly had to rewatch the footage to remember any of this, because it's far from the point of the game. Like, I don't even know what the darkness is, it's just a made up mumbo. The visuals of this game may not seem too special at first, but I think they're kind of striking in a way. It's 16-bit styled, but the portrait layout reminds me a lot of a Game Boy. Most of the player's vision in this game are these two large black bars on the sides of the screen. I think that adds a lot to Anodyne. As of lately, I've actually been thinking a bit on game resolutions, and how much higher resolution games can clutter the screen and hinder the focus on the player. It's harder to appreciate the individual aspects of a world when there's so much on screen at once. Meanwhile, Anodyne is very concise. Every screen has everything you need to see. Young and the enemies and objects are always easily noticeable, and oddly enough makes every screen feel like its own piece of art that you scroll between. While I can see some people calling this game's looks generic or unoriginal, I oddly feel the opposite. I think Anodyne has a very distinct style, with its locations, characters, and overall color palette, that I can't think of many other games like it. Despite it looking familiar at first glance, it feels so much more different. Just a different vibe. Anodyne's music, composed by Melos Hantani, is when things truly elevate to a tier above it all. I don't think there's anything else like it. Dreamy, surreal, reflective, and warm. I've proven my memory isn't sharp already, but there are songs and moments from this game that I still remember from when I first played it. I opened this video on the Cliff song, and I mean, just listen to it. The song and moment that I remember from Anodyne the most is when the player first turns on the windmill. A pretty large task that would always hang over the player's mind, needing the 3 major keys in order to access the windmill, and the change to the world that results from it. It's truly an incredible moment that I don't even want to spoil. You gotta play it for yourself. However, replaying this game now, I found even more songs I enjoyed, such as Beach, Go, Friend, and Blue. One of these songs is now probably my favorite song in this game, Roof. An absolutely beautiful song that, I kid you not, plays for about 4 screens of the game. The song is nearly 3 minutes long, but most players will hear it for about 20 seconds, because what it represents is a scene. A moment that the player has to choose to stay in if they wish to continue experiencing this area of the world. And while I can never remember exactly, I guarantee that younger me probably ran right past these 4 screens without a second thought. However, now I can truly appreciate it. I can stand and watch the sky, appreciate this area, reflect upon it in the music. I know what I love in games now, and this is it. Maybe I've become more pretentious. Maybe I just realized how much more I need worlds that I can escape to. Anodyne has to be the only game I've ever played with music so good that I actively avoided transitional areas that would cause the music to change, trying to spend as much time as I could in one area, which, funnily enough, led to me missing one of the upgrades for the broom in this playthrough, as I skipped out on a cave in the cliffs area. Like, it actively upset me when I had to leave an area and hear that music I love fade out. I feel like a lot of y'all can grasp what this game is going for. It's basically just Link's Awakening, to the point where you even have a jump. Instead of attacking with a sword, you use a broom. One of the neater mechanics of this game is the dust, which is utilized a lot. The player can attack dust with the broom to collect it, where then their next attack will deposit that dust. This dust can be used to block shots, enemies, or even as a boat to travel across water without sinking, and its implementation into the final boss battle is pretty neat. I also very much so enjoy that the attack button is the same input as the talking button. I won't spoil too much, but it definitely leads to some pretty memorable moments, even after all these years. The overall game has us visiting different areas, venturing through dungeons that we clear by gathering keys, which can be obtained throughout numerous, actually pretty neat puzzles, in the way they play with the mechanics and the enemies of the game, in pretty interesting scenarios. Other times, it just has us fighting enemies. The actual combat in Anodyne is, really isn't the best. It's kind of just a slap fest. You luckily have enough health that you can just tank a lot of it, but there's such a hilariously small number of iframes upon taking damage that it's pretty easy to just get pushed around and comboed, which did get kind of annoying. It doesn't help that a lot of the bosses sort of just bounce around like a pinball, and while you can jump to avoid certain attacks, there's no real telling what attacks can or can't be jumped. It's just very specific. Alongside the fact that this game isn't tile based, which caused me to find hitboxes and positioning to be a little tough at points. I know a lot of this may sound bad or like a total game killer, but to be honest, the combat works. And my gripes with it are so small to the rest of this game that I absolutely adore. So to be real, I don't even really care about the problems I have with the combat system. It truly doesn't matter. The broom the player uses has optional upgrades that can be switched between, one that increases the horizontal range of the broom, and one that gives it more reach from where you attack. I found out post-game that a new addition to the remaster, which allows you to actually switch between these modes without having to open the menu with the use of the number keys, which I think is a really cool idea, being able to switch between the wide and long upgrades during combat for certain scenarios on the fly. Probably would have made me enjoy the combat more, but alas, I chose the Cliffs theme instead. The main goal of Anodyne is to collect cards with the characters we meet in the world on it. This will allow us past certain gates that bar us off. One of my favorite things about Anodyne is just how open it is. There's so many ways to go that really gives the player that freeform approach. It's not overbearing. It's actually kinda nice to know that I have tons to do. And thanks to the fast travel nexus area, if I ever get lost, I can just explore elsewhere. While the key gates may hinder this freedom a bit, the jumping introduced into this game allows the player to straight up skip certain requirements and explore the game at their own pace with a well-timed diagonal running jump. I did this on my first playthrough, and here I am doing this now. The jump in this game is amazing, and thanks to the game's high amount of coyote time, you can choose to skip entire screens of puzzles. It rewards inventiveness and interaction with the game's mechanics, knowledge, and execution, and a part of me truly believes this was all intentional. I'm honestly not surprised that the sequel to this game ended up being a 3D platformer, because this game's movement and expression with its jump would put even a lot of linear 3D platformers to shame, with how much it encourages creativity and forging your own path with expression. I guess as we start to near the end of this look back at this game, I do want to talk about the message of Anodyne and my sort of thoughts on it. I will be going into spoilers the end of the game, so be aware of that. While I'm sure there's room to interpret certain aspects and characters of the story, I think a majority of us can agree that this game's about isolation. The journey in itself is shown off as this huge epic adventure with these big fights and plentiful of landscapes and characters, but what it represents is just the struggle to get over the anxiety to go outside and hang out with a friend. I think that's a pretty novel concept for a game. On my first playthrough, I didn't really understand that at all. Nowadays playing it, it's so obvious. Maybe there's something nice about being young and not stressed out over so many things all the time. Nice to be young and not consider every possible way you can mess up every possible situation in life, before those situations even happen, if they'll ever happen. Life only gets harder, huh? I do like the way the story bleeds into the various aspects of the game. Like, this game definitely has that early 2010s indie game vibe with the overt references to other video games, but it kinda works here, considering Young as a character likes video games, so it makes sense that he would imagine the journey to going outside to hang out with a friend being a Zelda game, but instead of a sword, he's using a broom, like he's just idly cleaning his house as an excuse to stall. The more generic aspects of this game is sort of on purpose. The wise village elder, even though this game doesn't even have a village. The very generic and vague names of this world, and even the enemies being things like slimes, is purposefully a parody in a way to reflect a character's mind. I really like some of the ways that Young's mind gets reflected. Like, I'm really curious about the suburban area, where your broom gets replaced by a knife and you're encouraged to kill everyone in order to get a card, and what that may say about Young, how he views outside, other people. This game is always going through these tonal shifts where one moment you'll see these two performers escaping their sacrificial ritual by choosing to end their own lives on their own terms, to the next talking to a bear who expresses how many times he's had sexual intercourse, to even the final fight being this epic battle, only to end with Briar casually asking Young if he wants to go get a sandwich, and then boom, credits. I can't believe I was ever one of those people that couldn't get the message of this game on a first playthrough. Like these cubes talking about the nature of online relationships and such. Meanwhile, younger me was probably just mashing through it thinking it was nonsensical gibberish. I know nowadays, the concept of a game taking place inside a silent protagonist's mind, which reflects themselves, is pretty damn unoriginal. But I still feel like the way that Anodyne does it, both now and back then, is pretty unique and uplifting. Personally, I do understand and relate to how much of a simple task such as social interaction can feel like an insurmountable journey. I do understand what it's like to fantasize yourself in a video game to help encourage you in real life, using video game statistics and characteristics to help ease your anxiety and feel more comfortable. I know what it's like to be weird. There's something of an honest passion when it comes to Anodyne to me. Something that makes it stand out from other games. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be anything it's not. Not the next big indie hit. Not an epic journey with complex gameplay made for the hardcore Zelda fans. Not even a game that's really made for everyone. It's a game that isn't afraid to be personal, isn't afraid to be weird, and isn't afraid to be itself. And I respect that. As similar as it may seem to other games, it truly is different. And also, Anodyne just has like one of the coolest post games of any video game ever. One that allows the player to swap tiles in the world and encourages them to break out of bounds and find all sorts of hidden Easter eggs and areas. Such a fun and weird idea for a post game that I feel like you never see other games do. Can you imagine how scared big AAA games would be of such an experimental idea that would make their game look broken? I'm really glad I played Anodyne again. Coming back to it now, I think my appreciation for this game has probably tripled. My eyes can see so many more colors now as I grow older. I feel like I've come so much farther from a clueless teen. There's a lot of games out there, from the big AAA hits to the indie darlings appreciated by millions. But while those games will all come and go, people will move on and find their new favorites, to me, Anodyne stands as a game that I think everyone should play. It's just one of those special games that will always be able to float as its own, untouchable. One of those games that so many people wish they knew about, and one that once you play, it will always be in the back of your mind. Yeah, I still love Anodyne. Thanks for watching, y'all. If you want to see my videos a week earlier, as well as ensure that I can keep making videos in the future, feel free to become a channel member. Special shoutouts to Golly Gamer tier supporter, Ken Chiago, absolute legend. As for Anodyne 2 and Stephanie, yeah, I really am interested and plan on playing through them. I'm not going to promise a video on them. I mean, ideally, yes. I'm not even sure if my computer can run them. We'll see. And I also want to cover some in-between games before then. Also, I know I need to start on Gates to Infinity. It's just that that's such a huge time sink. And I've got a lot of work that I've been doing. Just started up a new project that y'all will probably hear about in a year or so, assuming I'm not dead or homeless. I don't really like working on things in small parts, rather than just finishing them in one swoop. But maybe working on the Gates video one step at a time is a good idea. We'll see. But as for now, I'll catch you on the next one, alright?